Good morning. If you head over to the Washington Post this morning and you head over to the opinions area right here, you can see, well, first of all, the Washington Post is a mess lately. Look at how they're trying to just tie everything to race and gay, sex, gin, whatever you want to do it, be liberal, be whatever. Just be a Marxist. Just don't like Trump and don't be a patriot. Don't be in support of America. Here is the opinion section. There are three really beautiful articles that all kind of illustrate in different ways why the left hates Trump and why they hate you for supporting him. This is the GOP convention showed Democrats how it's done. Now, bear in mind, I'm just going to tell you all of the articles that I'm going to show you are very tongue-in-cheek, underhanded, really rude. Not surprising, obviously. This is how they work. But I'm just pointing this out for the normies who read that headline and go, that seems like she's being positive. Yeah, no, it does until you read how she thinks of Trump and the GOP, and that this is like a shock to her. She's like, yeah, they showed us how it's done. We're going to show you what they showed us. Okay, so the first thing she says is this. And now that the convention's complete, we wait to see, guess, is it how many people decide they are going to vote for Trump after all? No. Are we waiting to see how many people are going to now poll in favor of the president? No. Are we going to see any of the things that you would expect to be now watching for, running new metrics for, collecting data for after a convention? Nope. No, we're going to be looking for the how many people in the 1,500 in attendance get sick with COVID. That's what she's saying right here. How many people get sick with COVID-19 or die? That's what we're going to be looking for. We're waiting to see how many people die. Dumbfoundingly, those who gathered at the White House South Lawn weren't even tested before they showed up. Yeah, because, guys, if it's fucking the end of August and you don't have corona by now, and you show up to the White House and you're outside and you sit in your seat outside, why would you get tested? Why would that's like saying, well, I saw a person walking down the street. They weren't even tested beforehand. Eat a dick. And it doesn't matter. This is all stupid. Dumbfoundingly, they weren't tested. And they got a physical seat for the convention. They now had the privilege of having to decide whether they had the Russian roulette choice of demonstrating loyalty for the president or taking a bullet from the China virus. So, first thing, Kathleen, you're doing a great job of at least pointing out that it is the choice between the president of the United States and China. If some Democrats secretly wish for a mild case or two in furtherance of their belief that Trump is responsible for the deaths of nearly 180,000 Americans and counting, Republicans may see that escalating violence around the country as helpful to their law and order incumbents' re-election. What a disgusting thing to say. Kathleen, no Republican supports violence as a means for a political justification to their ends. No one thinks that terrorism is acceptable on the right. You only see these rioters and the looters and the people that are saying, yeah, well, these are our reparations. They're not Republicans. The people that are looting Nike, they're not Republicans. They're not going to go vote for Trump. They already voted for Biden in the mail. Not many would admit to harboring such thoughts, she says, but in today's divided nation in which even the president views blue America as the other, the once unthinkable becomes politically logical, if only as shameful internal monologues. Well, gosh, if that ain't the pot calling the kettle African American. This is the sick thing, right? You have a lefty journo who gives the opinion that is, let me tell you what the left does, but I'll say it's what the Republicans are doing right now. So Hillary conspired with international foreign assets and funds and foreign influencers, if you want to call them that, or just foreign states, head of states, and tried to conspire in the election in 2016 to make sure that she won, to make sure that she could steal it, and then Trump won. Then no one believed that that would ever happen. They accused him then of cheating and conspiring and colluding and doing all the things that she had done because that was their only other way to lobby and attack. He won fair and square, and she lost cheating. So you have to accuse him of cheating. They mirror what they do. and then they accuse and project it onto the net. So then you see the Democrats say, well, we've been hiding some really shady stuff. The establishment, including Lindsey Graham, hiding some shady stuff about how they're getting money in and out of politics through Ukraine. Well, as soon as the president asks in a phone call about Ukraine, they go nuts and impeach him. Remember? So now they're saying, I mean, this is obvious, right? Every time we talk about projection, and those are just two big examples, but there are many, many more. Look at this. Now they're saying, well, really it's the Republicans that want escalating violence around the country. Just swap Republicans, and this becomes true. If I said Democrats now see escalating violence across the country as helpful to their election strategy, not many people would admit to harboring those thoughts, but in today's divided nation, when the president is casting away blue America as unthinkable political ideologies emerge, is what she's really saying, it's not really much more than a shameful internal monologue that the left wants violence. But she can't admit that, so she accuses the right of it and says it out loud. It's ridiculous. We can see only violence occurring in major leftist cities, and the leftists are the ones committing the violence. She says, meanwhile, boundaries everywhere are being blurred. Intentionally, because you want to confuse people. That's what doublespeak is. That's what newspeak is. From Trump using the White House as a soundstage for crass political gain, to white protesters intimidating a white woman in a D.C. restaurant because she refused to raise a fist in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. No. Ooh, man, Kathleen. Being intimidated because she wouldn't raise a fist in solidarity. So she would not be compulsory. She would not give in to a compulsory act being demanded of her. Raise your arm. Raise your arm and do this. Say that you're with us or we're going to scream and taunt. Come on. You're saying that, well, she's wrong for not just doing it. Fuck you, Kathleen. What are you, Canadian? You're not an American. Does no one have regard for norms anymore? Is it norm? Is it the norm to give in to the mob? Kathleen? Ignorant slut. Biden needs to distance himself from the rioters and agitators and troublemakers who are scaring people out of their wits, she wrote. And Trump and his own pot-stirring allies need to publicly recognize that protesting police violence against unarmed black people is legitimate and well within our traditions. Extremists rule when moderation is what's called for. What? It's easy to mock current attempts to defund police departments. You're damn right it is. And it isn't hard to say that demilitarizing is a more sensible approach. So what she's saying is like she's asking for something stupid. That way when she comes back with something smarter, we'll agree to it. Nevertheless, Trump may have turned his listless campaign around with a convention that contrasted starkly, and by degrees better, than the Democratic version. It helps sometimes to go second, she says. Well, that's true. It definitely did help to go second. Not because we got to look at what they did and then respond, but it was like, wow, you could see very clear holes in the Biden strategy, so to speak. The establishment left strategy had holes in it. And Trump made sure he filled them on his side with American flags. They were everywhere. 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 This is where it gets interesting, though. It says, Trump brought real people and applause to the convention. A narity, a celebrity, rock star, or Hollywood star in sight. None would have come if they were invited, she says. Well, that's, again, one of those little underhanded little, he didn't have any celebrities. Not that they would have come. Because she's a bitch, but that's okay. We'll just keep reading her stuff. None would have come if they were invited, but such absences are of little concern to potential voters who saw themselves in a series of personal stories that illustrated conservative principles. Again, that actually is true. Maybe we should just sit down, Kathleen. Maybe you're writing this in a tone that I just can't get on board with because you sound unreasonable. You're making excuses for violence, so I don't know. Notable among them, Alice Johnson, a black woman sentenced to life in prison on drug trafficking charge. Well, she had like some weed in her purse. They called it drug trafficking. Sentenced her to life in prison. Well, Trump granted her clemency, boosted her out of the clink in 2018, and he signed that over the weekend. Johnson and others spoke on Trump's chief public deficits, compassion, and see. This is why, Kathleen, no one takes you seriously. Okay. Because you couldn't write, Alice Johnson spoke about the president's compassion and empathy. Things that sometimes are missed or whatever you want to put, but you put his chief public deficits being compassion and empathy. Kathleen, roll yourself in shit, okay? Fuck you. As counter arguments to Biden's charge that the president is bereft of both. Come on. Especially poignant were Marsha and Carl Mueller, who spoke of their 26-year-old daughter, Kayla. Oh, this is going to be fine. Okay, so Kayla Mueller is captured in Turkey by ISIS. And Kathleen, you have the audacity to defend it. You say, well, Kayla was captured and killed by the Islamic State. No, bitch, it was ISIS. You don't call them the Islamic State unless you're going to say they're revered scholars as well. They're austere and revered scholars who just invited her in on a humanitarian raid. She was there on a humanitarian mission in Turkey. They minced no words in suggesting that the inaction by the Obama-Biden administration was to blame for her fate, because it was. Because she got kidnapped, tortured, and raped, and then killed, and they didn't do anything. They could have gotten her back, and they didn't. And if President Trump was the president then, ISIS wouldn't exist. So they're just saying, well, if President Trump is freeing American hostages around the world, if he had been president, Kayla wouldn't have died. Her parents are right to say that. Kathleen is like, that's so wrong, because if anyone knew anything, like, you would totally know that they were going to rape and kill her no matter what. Like, that's Kathleen's whole thing is like they're actually just really fine Islamic State people in 2015 that invited her in. Some may consider these moments little more than shameless emotional manipulation. That's what you're calling this, shameless emotional manipulation. Do you mean showing you the truth and you feel bad about it? And so this is, read it backwards now. Mirror this back. If she's mad that this is being put to her this way, could you then just say, well, maybe it's that she feels shame. She feels like she has been emotionally manipulated before to not care about these things. And now that she's being shown them, well, the Democrats also pulled some heartstrings. No, they fucking didn't. We know they didn't. We absolutely know they didn't. What the RNC's lineup is so effective, she wrote, however, was that they were so numerous, right? Because we have example after example after example of why conservative ideology is correct here. The new message was that Trump, we don't see working behind the curtain, is a much kinder, much more gentler guy than anyone we knew. Accurate or not, the stories may have had the desired effect of humanizing him while diminishing the idea that Democrats are the decency brokers. Well, that's true too, because Democrats haven't brokered any decency at all. You've gone in and said with your senators, we want open anti-American laws now, or we just shut down the government. And then they say, well, the House is going to just impeach Trump over and over and over, and we're going to stymie the courts, and we're going to not admit and basically just, they're not going to tell any kind of truth about him at all. They're just going to stymie him in every turn. So, yeah, you haven't brokered any decency in 4 years. Why would we believe that you are now? This finishes with, by now some readers are surely screaming into their pillows. And Kathleen, you are a pillow biter, but you are not getting me to scream into a pillow. We have seen this disconnect between perception and reality before. And then she goes on to talk about the other bad Republicans of also Trump and then George W. Bush. Cool. Well, they were shocking developments when they both won again and again and again. When Trump won the first time, when Bush won a second time. The media and liberal quadrants of the electorate, now she admits that they're together. The chasm between the expectations born of polling and the expectations born of instinct, reminding us that there is in the know, and then there's in the know about the rest of the Americans. So, makes a good point. The journalists who clutter together in D.C. and just kind of revolve around one another, they poll each other, they talk to one another, they base their opinions on each other, and that is being in the know. But being in the know about the rest of the country is what you and I are doing right now. And it says, with roughly this should have been the headline, by the way. Read this back to yourself and just forget everything else that I've said in this article, because we're going to go to another one here in another video. With roughly 230 million in cash in Trump's campaign coffers, that is, and a silent contingent of possible voters who care less about personality than they do about the economy, her words, school, and violence. The race is much tighter than polls indicate. Again, this should have been the headline. With $230 million in cash in Trump's campaign, in Trump's campaign coffers, the silent contingent of possible voters who just care about the economy, schools, and limiting violence. Justice, how about? Why don't you say it that way? The economy, we care about education, we care about justice. Not racial justice, just justice. The race is much tighter than polls indicate, because the polls are lying. Kathleen admits that the media and liberal quadrants of the electorate are one and the same. And she admits at the very bottom that $230 million in Trump's campaign coffers is a big deal. She buries it in the very, very back of her article intentionally. So that's the first one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss the other two that are coming. Because if you thought this was the only opinion that the Washington Post had up this weekend condemning the RNC for how good it was, you're wrong. I got two more coming for you. Stay tuned. Oh, and do everything else that you can do to keep America